Hi guys, a huge fear for the Tories is that the issue of immigration will disappear from the radar of ordinary people. The less we talk about it, the less they can use it as a stick to beat the government over the head with. It requires talking heads in the media and loudmouth politicians continually banging on about immigration for it to have any real benefit to the Conservatives. But I think the riots have put the fear of God into some commentators who have tried to rile people up. So they have to try a different approach. The Tory Rwanda scheme is dead, but some of their supporters want to breathe life back into it. Case in point, Carole Malone.
We're nowhere near a situation where we can really back up what the NCA says with evidence to say, yes, it was a deterrent, or no, it wasn't.
Let me give you a little bit of evidence. Michael Martin, the island's Deputy Prime Minister, he blamed the scheme, blamed the Rwanda scheme and the threat of it entirely on the fact that 80% of the migrants that were arriving in Northern Ireland had crossed the open border because of the threat of Rwanda. If you remember.
And then what happened? See, this was before the local elections. So people were leaving England, crossing into Northern Ireland, going to Scotland, crossing into Northern Ireland, and then they were crossing the border into the Republic of Ireland. And what happened? Well, the Tories said, well, we're not going to take these people back before the local elections. And what did I say? What would happen? I said this was a storm in a teacup. It would be resolved. And what happened after the local elections? It was resolved. The asylum seekers returned to Britain. So there was no issue here. And to suggest that this was a deterrent against who? Because the people were already in Britain. How did it stop people from crossing the Channel if they were already in Britain? This was a deterrent against maybe some people staying in Britain, but it was not a deterrent against people crossing the Channel, which the Rwanda scheme was presented as, sold as.
Remember all those pictures on the streets of Ireland of migrants camping? Michael Martin blamed that entirely on the threat of the Rwanda plan.
That's a politician, so that is by definition a political statement.
No, it's a fact because it looked like the Rwanda scheme was going to take off. It looked like it was going to get off the ground. And this was just last year. And immediately the crossings into Northern Ireland went up by 80%. So my point is, Labour has always been terrified of the Rwanda plan, terrified that it might work, which is why they fought tooth and...
But nobody believed it would work. The Rwandan government said it would not work. The Rwandan government said that there would be a cap on the numbers coming in. So obviously, by definition, it doesn't work. They sold off properties because they knew it wasn't going to work. And the Supreme Court said it was not going to work because it wasn't lawful. Who actually believed it was going to work? No, and I'm not talking about politicians and their rhetoric. I'm actually talking about people who truly believed it was going to work. Because I don't think anyone with a functioning brain believed it would work. Because how could it work if there was a limited number of people who could be taken in? It was deemed unlawful by the Supreme Court, and judges in Britain said we can't send people to Rwanda because it's against the law.
There to make sure it wouldn't, voting it down every time, getting it into the Lords Labour peers, they're voting it down.
How can they vote it down? Some Labour peers voted against it. The Labour Party voted against it, but the Tories had a majority in the House of Commons, and Labour did not have a majority to stop it in the House of Lords. How can they vote it down? Like, what reality is she operating in?
Labour didn't want it to work because they knew that would have given...
But Carole, Labour didn't vote it down.
Henry.
Okay.
Let me land.
Yeah, I'll let you land. Okay.
So it was they were terrified that it would give the Tories an uplift come the election. But, whatever. If you're going to ban a plan, simply because it's the Tory plan, if you're going to ban it, have one to replace it. So Starmer said quite clearly before the election, he said, I have a plan ready to go to stop the boats. And part of that plan was the Border Security Command. Now, he can't even get anyone to lead that organisation because they know it's a poison chalice. So that is not operational. And he's not said, and every time he's asked, he does what he always does, Starmer. He diddles around the question. When he's asked how he's going to smash the gangs, he has no answer. He says, I'm going to work with allies, meaning in Europe. Okay, so France has not been very successful in stopping migrants, and neither has Italy. So having discussions with Italy and France isn't going to crack it. In fact, Starmer wants to bring more people in because he thinks we're not taking our fair share compared to Europe. So, he has no plan.
Do you think we'll be more successful?
Okay, she's right. Starmer said that he would have, a command or something that would deal with stopping the boats, and it would reach out to other countries. And he has met with the Italian Prime Minister recently, and I believe he was in France recently as well. Look, I honestly believe that the Labour Party, the Labour government, understand that immigration is going to go down because the Tories have put in measures, for example, stopping dependents from coming, that would bring down immigration. Now, that's bad. I mentioned it on the live stream where universities are going to be struggling because they can't get the foreign students they need in order to compensate for the reduction in fees for British students. This is going to be a problem. The care sector needs staff. It's not going to get the staff it needs. So immigration is going to come down. Now, Labour can present it as a victory. It's terrible for the economy. It's terrible for Britain, but it can be presented as a political victory. And then there's no need to talk about stopping the boats or... See, what's going to happen, I think, is that we're going to move away from this discussion about immigration. The Tories and Reform UK will try and amplify it. But I think that we're going to return to more sound politics related to the cost of living crisis, about growing the economy, creating jobs, rebuilding schools that are literally crumbling down, the NHS. They are going to be the priorities. That's what Labour, I believe, is going to talk about in Parliament. So that will be the narrative. Immigration will not be the narrative. Some people will try to make it the narrative, but I think they're, in a sense, ignoring it, knowing that the numbers are going to come down because of policies that the Tories put in to discourage people from coming to Britain, even though they're necessary. And they're just going to let it go. Now, there is a risk in that approach because, people, if there's a vacuum, people like Nigel Farage will try and fill that vacuum. But I think the riots have put a bit of a damper on the rhetoric that Farage and others have been pushing before the riots. Some people could call it incitement. That's all gone, or it will be dampened somewhat. So I think what Labour is doing is ignoring immigration, focusing on the priorities, which is, of course, the NHS, cost of living, growing the economy, jobs, stuff like that, and hoping that people will not talk about immigration because it's not a priority anymore. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.